My husband cheated on me for years. My son betrayed me for money. And my daughter-in-law? She tied me to a chair and slapped me until I bled. But they forgot one thing. A woman like me doesn't break quietly. I burn quietly and then I rise. Hi, my name is Virginia Cole. I'm 68 years old. And I want to talk to the women watching this who know what it means to be used, lied to, and discarded after you've given everything. If you're over 60, if you've ever had your kindness mistaken for weakness, please stay with me. This isn't just my story, it might be yours too. Most people think the worst part of my life started when my husband died. But truth is, I started dying long before that. Chapter 1. Tied to a chair like a criminal. I was married to Gerald Cole for 42 years. On paper, he was a respectable man, a high school principal, church deacon, father to our only son Luke. But behind the curtains, he had a second phone, a second woman, and a second life. I found out the truth when I was 59. One afternoon, he left his phone on the kitchen counter while showering. A message flashed. Can't wait to see you again tonight. I'll bring your favorite wine. Her name was Cassandra, a former teacher, half his age. They'd been seeing each other for nearly 6 years. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just looked at me and said, "You've been more of a mother than a wife for a long time, Ginny. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." He made me feel like I was the problem. But I stayed, not because I was weak, but because Luke was going through college, because I couldn't start over, because women like me were raised to endure, not escape. So I swallowed it, buried it. I smiled at church, cooked dinner. I even sent a birthday card to that woman once, just to let her know I knew. I never got a reply. Gerald died of cancer 5 years later. And I didn't cry. Not once. I grieved for the man I thought I married, but not for the liar he became. And when he died, I truly believed the worst was behind me. But betrayal has a way of repeating itself, especially when your son inherits more than just your husband's name. After Gerald passed, Luke offered to move back to help. He and Heather, his sharp-tongued wife. I thought maybe, just maybe, this was a second chance to rebuild my family, even if my marriage was a lie. But the truth? They weren't here to help me. They were here to strip me. Slowly, strategically, like wolves in their Sunday best. It started small, comments, cold shoulders. Heather made me feel like a guest in my own home. She said I made the house smell like old people and that I left granny crumbs in the toaster. Luke said nothing. He never said anything. But the silence hurt worse than the words. Until one night, the cruelty turned physical. They came home late, drunk, loud. I was sitting quietly, knitting a scarf for my granddaughter Macy. She was sleeping upstairs, God willing. The door slammed open. Luke stormed in, his eyes glassy, his mouth tight. Heather followed, mascara smeared and voice sharp. "What the hell are you still doing up?" she barked. Before I could answer, Luke shoved me into a chair. Hard. My back jolted. My hip cracked. And then, rope. I didn't even know where he got it from. Maybe the garage. He tied my wrists to the arms, my ankles to the legs. My own son. Then Heather stepped forward. She slapped me. Once. Twice. Over and over. Until I tasted blood. Until my ears rang. Until the room blurred. "You'll sign this house over," she hissed. "You don't deserve to die here. You old cow." And Luke, my only child, just stood there, watching, the same way his father used to watch me cry and walk away. But something happened inside me that night. Not fear. Not rage. Something deeper. I stopped being ashamed. And I started planning. This wasn't going to be the end of my story. It was going to be the start of theirs. The fall. The unraveling. The lesson they'd never forget. And if you're watching this and you've ever been betrayed by a husband, a child, or anyone you gave your life to, tell me where you're from in the comments. Tell me what you've survived. We are not alone anymore. Please like, share, and subscribe. This story isn't just mine, it might save someone else's life. Chapter 2. She called me a useless cow, then took my pills away. I couldn't sleep after that night. Not because of the pain. Not even the bruises. It was the betrayal. It echoed in my bones. You see, when your own child watches you bleed and does nothing, something in your soul changes forever. There's no going back after that. The morning after Heather tied me to the chair and slapped me until my lip burst, she acted like nothing had happened. She actually smiled at me. She poured herself coffee in the kitchen and said, "Morning, Virginia. Do you want decaf or, oh right, you're not supposed to have caffeine. Not at your age." She laughed. Like she was hosting a game show. I was still shaking. I hadn't even cleaned the dried blood from my face yet. My wrists ached from the rope burns. But I didn't say a word. I just nodded and walked away, like a shadow. Because I needed time. Time to watch. To plan. To survive. But the abuse didn't stop. It got worse. Heather decided I was no longer allowed to cook for myself. "You nearly set the microwave on fire," she claimed. A lie. She unplugged the stove, moved all the sharp knives into a locked drawer. She started hiding my medication. I take 5 pills a day, blood pressure, thyroid, arthritis, and a sleeping aid for my severe insomnia. I've been on them for years. I never missed a dose. Until that week. She took them. All of them. When I asked, she said, "You don't need those. You need to toughen up. Pills are for people with futures." I tried asking Luke. "Your wife hid my meds." "I need them, Luke. I could have a stroke." He looked at me like I was dirt on his shoes. "You're overreacting, Ma. You've always been dramatic. Maybe she's just trying to keep you off the pills so you don't end up falling again." Falling. I hadn't fallen in over 4 years. But suddenly, they were painting me as a liability. I saw what they were doing. They were setting the stage to have me declared mentally unfit. I'd heard of this happening, especially to older women. Get the property. Lock the mother away. Live the golden life. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I started writing everything down. Every bruise. Every word. Every move they made. At night, I hid my notes inside a hollowed-out Bible. Heather would never touch that. She only pretended to believe in God when company came over. One afternoon, I was in my room resting when I heard them fighting downstairs. Heather was screaming. Something about the lawyer and her name on the deed. Luke shouted, "She's not going to live forever, Heather. Just calm down." That's when I realized she wanted the house in her name. And Luke hadn't done it yet. That was the beginning of their cracks. But I couldn't enjoy it. Not yet. Because later that night, they brought Macy into it. She was 7. Innocent. My heart. She came into my room crying. "Nana, why did Mommy say you're going to the hospital forever?" My throat closed up. "What hospital, baby?" "She said they're going to take you away and that you won't come back." I kissed her forehead and held her tight. Then I whispered in her ear, "Don't you worry, sweetheart. Nana's not going anywhere. In fact, I'm just getting started." That night, I locked my door. I took the extra meds I had hidden months ago and slipped them into my sock drawer. I started recording voice memos on an old phone they didn't know I had. And I waited. Because soon, everything would flip. I just needed one more secret. One more crack in their evil little plan. And, trust me, it came. What Heather was hiding. It was big. And when I found it buried in her closet in a red leather folder, I knew exactly how to make them both kneel. But I'll tell you that in the next chapter. If this reminds you of anything you've faced, or someone you know has suffered like this, please leave a comment. Chapter 3. The folder in the closet that changed everything. For 3 days after Heather took my medication, my body screamed in ways I can't describe. My knees locked up. My heart raced. My head pounded like someone was hitting me with a hammer from the inside. But I didn't let them see it. Pain is a strange thing. When you've had your soul torn open by betrayal, Physical pain just feels like background noise. So I smiled at them. I said thank you when Heather gave me toast with no butter. I nodded when Luke told me not to wander around the house at night like a ghost. Let them think they were winning. Because deep inside, I knew my moment was coming. And it came. Faster than I expected. Heather had a habit of leaving things in strange places. Purses on kitchen chairs. Empty wine bottles in the laundry basket. Mail, important mail, half open on the stairs. That day, they were out at Macy's school for parent visitation day. I knew they'd be gone for a while, dressed up for the other parents. Pretending to be good. I used the time carefully. I started with their bedroom. Quietly. Cautiously. I didn't need to steal anything, just find something. Something real. I looked through drawers, under pillows, even beneath the rug. Nothing. Then I remembered something. Heather never let Macy into her walk-in closet. Ever. Said it was off limits. That's where I checked last. And there it was. A red leather folder. Thick. Heavy. Stuffed with papers, labeled in bold black marker. Private. Legal. Do not touch. I sat down on the edge of their bed and opened it slowly. First page, a credit card statement. Her name on it. A balance of $48,722. Second page, a letter from a debt collection agency. Final notice. Third page, a denial letter from a mortgage lender. Heather had tried to take out a loan. It had been rejected. My fingers shook. Page after page, I saw it all. Unpaid loans, bounced checks, maxed out cards. Even a forged signature application she'd submitted under MY name last year. She was drowning in debt. They weren't just cruel, they were desperate. That's why they moved in. That's why she took my pills. That's why they wanted the house. Heather was building a life on lies. And Luke was too cowardly to stop her. But now I had proof. And I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. That would be a waste. I needed to use this. Like a weapon. So I took photos of every single page, careful not to wrinkle or shift anything. My old phone didn't have much memory, but it had just enough. I sent copies to a cloud account I set up months ago under an old email address I used when Gerald first cheated on me. I learned from the first betrayal. And I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. I put everything back perfectly. Not a single paper out of place. By the time they came home, I was sitting calmly in my rocking chair, knitting. Heather walked past me and smirked. Don't stay up too late. You need your beauty sleep. I smiled back. I'll sleep well tonight. And I did. Because now, they weren't just tormentors. They were cornered rats. And I was holding the trap. Chapter 4. She found out I knew, and she lost control. You know the moment a dog senses it's about to be leashed? That nervous energy, twitchy eyes, fake calm? That's what Heather looked like 2 mornings later. She stood in the kitchen, pretending to scroll her phone, but her fingers weren't moving. She wasn't reading anything. She was watching me. Not watching with suspicion. Watching with fear. Something in her gut had told her I knew. And when abusers feel their mask slipping, they don't ask questions. They attack. That day, I heard her on the phone, locked in the bathroom, talking in a low, furious whisper. She's acting different. Yeah, she smiled at me. No, not her usual fake one, like a real one. She knows something. I don't care if it was locked, David. Someone's been in my closet. David. Another name. Not Luke. I stood quietly outside the bathroom door, heart pounding. So there it was. Not just financial betrayal. Heather was having an affair too. Just like Gerald did to me 30 years ago. History was spitting on me all over again. When she came out, she jumped. I was just standing there, holding a basket of laundry. My lip gently curled. You okay, Heather? I asked sweetly. She blinked. Fine. Why are you standing like that? Just listening, I said. You never know what you might hear in a house this small. Her jaw clenched. That evening, while Luke was out with Macy at piano practice, Heather showed me what panic looks like. She stormed into my room. No knock. slapped the laundry off my bed and screamed, "You went through my closet, you old witch." I didn't flinch. "I don't know what you're talking about." She grabbed my hair, yanked it hard. I stumbled back. "I'm not stupid." "What did you see? Did you touch my folder?" I looked her straight in the eye. "You think you're powerful, Heather. But you're standing in a house that isn't yours, yelling at a woman you're trying to erase. You're not strong. You're drowning. And I'm the one with the lifeboat." That's when she slapped me again. But this time, it didn't sting. Not because it wasn't hard, but because something inside me had already snapped free. She left the room shaking, and I heard her vomiting in the bathroom 5 minutes later. That night, Luke tried to make small talk at dinner. Asked about the weather. I smiled and passed the peas, but Heather couldn't look at me. She was unraveling. And I wasn't done yet. The next day, I made 3 copies of the photos and documents from her folder. I mailed one to my old lawyer, sealed with a note, "If anything happens to me, release this to authorities." One to a trusted old friend who ran a senior women's shelter. And one I kept taped beneath the drawer of Macy's old art desk. Let them come for me. Let them try. Because the moment they stepped too far, I'd bring the whole house of cards down. Chapter 5. The day my son tied me to a chair. It was a Thursday. Gray skies. Quiet house. The kind of day that feels like it's holding its breath. Macy had gone to a school field trip. Heather said she needed space. And Luke, my only son, my first breath in this world after a lifetime of loneliness, he stayed home from work. He knocked on my door mid-morning. Calm voice. "Ma, can we talk?" I looked up from the quilt I was mending. "Sure, baby." I still called him baby. I wish I hadn't. Not after what he did next. He walked in, shut the door gently, sat on the edge of my bed. His eyes didn't meet mine. "Heather's upset. She says you've been snooping, making threats, talking to people outside the house." I stayed silent. "She thinks maybe it's time you took a break. Somewhere where professionals can help you feel safe." My blood froze. "You mean a home?" I said. No, he lied. "It's just a little evaluation. A week or 2 tops. To make sure you're okay." I stood up slowly. "Luke, I am not going anywhere. And you know I'm not crazy." His jaw hardened. I could see Heather in him. That sharp meanness. Then he stepped forward and pulled a long black phone charger from his back pocket. I blinked. "What is that?" He didn't answer. He shoved me into the chair beside the dresser hard. Before I could scream, his hand clamped over my mouth. The cord came around my wrists tight, too tight. He tied me to the chair. My son, the boy I had carried in my womb. The boy I fed when I had nothing left for myself. And then Heather walked in. Hair pulled back. Calm. She looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. "Oh, don't look so surprised," she said. She stepped forward and slapped me. Hard. Once. Then again. And again. I lost count after 6. Each one louder. Crueler. My lips split open. I felt blood drip down my chin. "You like playing detective, huh?" she hissed. "You think you're going to ruin us?" Another slap. "You should have died with your useless marriage." That one cut deeper than her hand. Luke stood in the corner, watching. Not a single word. My own son. When she finally stopped, she leaned in, whispered in my ear, "If you say a word to Macy about this, I'll tell her you fell down the stairs." Again. She'll believe me. She always does. They left me there for 4 hours. No water. No food. Bleeding. Dizzy. But I didn't break. Because while I sat there, I remembered every birthday I gave up something for. Every doctor bill I paid so Luke could go to college. Every time I forgave Gerald for staying out too late, reeking of perfume that wasn't mine. And I knew no one would save me. So I had to save myself. When they finally untied me, I pretended to be weak. I stumbled to my room, shut the door, and smiled through the blood. Because now, I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. If this story reflects the kind of abuse you've seen or felt, know this: you're not alone. These things do happen, especially to older women left powerless by the very people they loved. Please like, share, and subscribe to support stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're from, and if you've known anyone who's suffered in silence like Virginia. Chapter 6. I left the door open, and someone unexpected walked in. It took 3 full days before I could eat solid food again. My lip was still swollen. My cheekbone purple, tender to touch. My wrists had rope burns from the charger cord. And yet, every morning I woke up a little more alive. Because that chair, that slap, that silence from Luke, it was the final betrayal. There was nothing left to lose. And when you have nothing left to lose, you become someone new. I waited for the house to empty again. Heather had taken Macy to gymnastics. Luke had some emergency shift at work. I was alone. Finally, I did something small, something Heather never allowed. I opened the front door. Wide. Just to feel the air. To smell life. To remind myself that a world existed outside their control. And then, I heard footsteps. A soft shuffle on the porch. I turned. And there she was. Savannah Martin, my late husband Gerald's ex-secretary. The woman I always suspected he'd had an affair with. The woman I hadn't seen in 23 years. She looked older, but stronger. Wiser. We locked eyes for a moment that felt like an hour. I heard what's happening, she said quietly. And I need to talk to you. My knees nearly buckled. How? I whispered. How did you know? She walked inside without waiting. Sat on the couch like she'd lived there once. Luke came to me last week. Said he needed to borrow money. Said you were losing your mind and couldn't manage the house anymore. I stood frozen. He told you that? She nodded. He said he needed a loan, that the house would be as soon. I sank into the chair. She continued. I didn't believe him. You don't just lose your mind out of nowhere. So I started digging. Quietly. I looked into Heather. Her job, her debts. And then I saw your name linked to a declined credit line application. Savannah reached into her purse and handed me a manila envelope. Inside, bank printouts. Ones I hadn't seen before. Turns out, Heather had tried applying for a reverse mortgage on the house, claiming I was mentally unfit and had given verbal consent. My hand trembled. I looked up. Why are you helping me? She gave a half smile. Gerald betrayed you. I didn't. I kept your secrets after he died. He left something in my possession, something he meant to give you, but never did. I think now's the time. She handed me a smaller envelope. Inside was a notarized copy of Gerald's original will, dated 1 month before his death. And what I saw in those lines made my breath stop. He had removed Luke as a sole beneficiary, left the house entirely to me, with a clause that it could never be sold or mortgaged without my written permission, unless I was dead or declared legally insane by the court. I had legal power. The real will had been hidden. The one they used, the altered one Heather found, in his file cabinet after the funeral. It was a forgery, and now I had evidence. I looked up at Savannah. I want them to pay, I whispered. She leaned forward. Then let me help you make them. Chapter 7. Heather's game collapses in the most public way possible. The next 2 days, I said almost nothing. I let Heather scream at me for how I folded Macy's laundry wrong. I let Luke walk past me like I was furniture. But inside, I was organizing the evidence, quietly weaving my net. Savannah had already contacted her cousin, a real estate fraud attorney, who agreed to take the case pro bono once he saw the forged mortgage application with my fake signature. All I had to do was deliver the bait. And I knew exactly where. Macy's school fundraiser. A big, smiling, suburban affair with lemonade stands, music, neighbors, and, most importantly, reputation. Heather had been bragging for weeks about helping organize it. She printed flyers, wore her little clipboard like a badge of honor, and even forced Luke to wear a matching polo. It was the perfect stage. So I dressed up that day. Wore the same blue floral blouse Gerald once told me made me look too old. I didn't care. I felt powerful. Savannah walked beside me, wearing sunglasses and confidence. Heather's eyes froze when she saw me walking in public. At an event. Alive, upright, unbroken. Oh, she said too brightly. You're here. I didn't think you'd feel up to it with your condition. Savannah leaned in. She's perfectly lucid. In fact, we've got a few clarifications to make. Right there on the school lawn, Savannah pulled out a file folder. Inside, the original will, the forged mortgage documents, the audio recording of Heather's threats from a secret mic Savannah had planted in my lamp socket. A notarized letter from Gerald's old law firm confirming the real will's legitimacy. Luke walked over, already sensing something was wrong. Heather's fake smile cracked. Why are you showing this in public? She hissed. I looked straight into her eyes. Because you beat me. You tied me up. You humiliated me in my own home. And now, you're going to pay for it in front of every person who believed your lies. People began to gather. The principal. Heather's PTA friends. Macy's teacher. Then Savannah delivered the blow. Any sale, loan, or mortgage attempt on the property is fraudulent. A criminal investigation is underway. And you, Heather, forged medical statements about Virginia's mental health, crossing into felony elder abuse. Heather stammered. Luke went pale. And then, Macy came running from the schoolyard. Grandma, she shouted, hugging my waist. You came. Heather tried to pull her back, but Macy clung tighter. The crowd was silent. I smiled down at my granddaughter. I will always come for you, baby girl. Always. Heather's voice cracked. Luke, do something. But he just stood there, surrounded by witnesses. He couldn't save her. He couldn't save himself. Chapter 8. My son came to beg, but not for me. It was raining when he showed up. Not a gentle rain either, no. The kind that makes everything feel heavier. Like the sky is punishing the earth. I hadn't seen Luke since the fundraiser. Heather had been formally charged with elder abuse and attempted financial fraud. The school had removed her from all volunteer boards. Neighbors had started whispering. Even Macy was sent to her friends for a few days. And now, just 4 days later, there he was. Soaked. Shaking. Alone. I opened the door slowly. He didn't speak at first. Just looked at me. No longer with that arrogant pity in his eyes. This time, he looked like a little boy who lost everything. Can I come in? He finally asked. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. He sat on the edge of the same chair he had once tied me to. How poetic. He rubbed his palms on his jeans, looked around the room, maybe searching for something he recognized in this home he used to own. I didn't know she'd go that far, he started. I raised an eyebrow. You mean slapping your mother until she bled? Or faking mental health records to steal her house? He looked down. I know. I was wrong. I didn't want to lose her. Heather always said we'd be nothing without that house. That it was the only thing we had left after Dad. He trailed off. So now Gerald's ghost was his excuse. The same Gerald who cheated on me for 8 years before collapsing from a heart attack in a hotel not booked under his name. You let her beat me, Luke, I said softly. You stood in the doorway. Watched her split my lip open. And then you made me thank you for untying me. His eyes welled with tears. I was scared. I thought maybe you'd really lost it. Heather said if we didn't act fast, you'd give the house away or change the will again, I laughed. There was no again. You never even read the real will. Silence stretched between us. And then he said it. Mom, I need your help. There it was. I leaned back, folded my arms. Heather's account is frozen, he continued. We missed 2 mortgage payments on the second property. Her lawyer dropped her. The bank's threatening to foreclose. Macy's tuition is overdue. He looked up, wet eyes shining. We need a loan. Just enough to keep things afloat. I'll sign whatever you want. We'll move out. We'll leave you the house. I stared at him. The boy I raised. The man I never thought could become this. You know what's funny, Luke? I whispered. The day you tied me to that chair, you said it was for my safety. You looked me in the eye and still hurt me. I stood slowly, walked toward the door. Now you're tied. And no one's coming to untie you. He blinked. Mom, please. I opened the door. Go back to your mess. Drown in it. Maybe next time you raise a hand to someone, you'll remember what drowning feels like. And I closed the door, locked it, and slid the bolt so the past could never walk back in. Chapter 9. What Macy whispered to me that night. It was late, past 11 p.m. The house was still, except for the soft ticking of the old kitchen clock. I hadn't heard that sound in months. Heather had always played music loud, like silence scared her. But that night, silence was my companion, my comfort. Until I heard the knock. It was soft. So soft I thought maybe I imagined it. Then again. Tap. Tap. I opened the door and nearly cried. It was Macy, alone. Her tiny pink backpack slung over one shoulder, her cheeks wet from crying, and her arms wrapped around a stuffed rabbit I hadn't seen in years. Grandma, she whispered. Can I stay here tonight? Mommy said I couldn't come, but I ran out when she was on the phone. I knelt down, pulled her close. She was trembling. I brought her inside, made her warm milk, and wrapped her in the old quilt I'd stitched when she was born. We sat on the couch, the quiet between us thicker than ever. Then she looked up at me, eyes wide. And what she said next I will never forget for the rest of my life. Grandma, Mommy said she'd hurt me too if I told you. My blood turned to ice. I held her closer. What do you mean, sweetheart? She looked away, clutching the stuffed bunny so tightly its ears bent. She said, if I told you she hit me, or if I told the school lady about the times she locked me in the laundry room, she'd take my toys and cut them up. And she'd say I lied, and then she said Daddy wouldn't love me anymore. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth would break. She locks you in the laundry room? Macy nodded. Even when I cried. Even when I told her I had to pee. She said Grandma cried too, and she turned out fine. I felt fire in my chest. Real, blinding, maternal fury. This wasn't just elder abuse. It wasn't just betrayal. This was generational cruelty. A cycle. And it stops with me. I took her little hands in mine. Macy, listen to me. You are safe here. No one will hurt you again. She hesitated, then whispered, but what if she comes here? I smiled. Not a sweet smile. No, this one had teeth. If she comes here, I won't just fight back. I'll finish what she started. That night, I did two things. One, called Savannah and arranged for a temporary guardianship filing. Two, called Heather's probation officer with a new formal abuse report, this time for Macy. The officer said, if there's evidence, we'll have grounds to push for an emergency child protection order. Evidence? Oh, I had it. I had the camera Savannah hid in my lamp socket still running. And Macy's quiet confessions? All recorded. This wasn't just about justice anymore. This was about saving a soul before it was broken forever. Chapter 10. Heather returned for her daughter and got a warrant instead. The knock this time wasn't soft. It was loud, sharp, angry. The kind of knock that doesn't ask for entry, it demands it. I opened the curtain slowly. Heather, hair tied back in a messy bun, rage etched into every line of her face. Behind her, Luke sat in the car, engine running, hands gripping the wheel. And inside the house, Macy was still asleep upstairs, her cheek pressed gently against her stuffed bunny. I didn't flinch. I opened the door, but only halfway. I'm here for my daughter, Heather spat. Get out of my way, or I swear, careful, I said quietly. You're still on probation, remember? I'm still her mother. I nodded slowly. You were. For a while. That's when Savannah pulled up to the curb. She stepped out, holding a folder and a calm that only meant she knew she'd already won. Heather's eyes darted. "What is this?" Savannah handed me the folder, and I read aloud, "Emergency Child Protection Order, approved by Judge Nancy Keller at 7:32 this morning. Based on sworn affidavits, digital recordings, and audio evidence. Custody is now temporarily transferred to the maternal grandmother, Virginia Holden, pending formal hearing." Heather lunged. She shoved the door, tried to push past me. "I'll take her myself," she screamed. "You senile old hag," but before she got one foot inside, 2 officers stepped up behind her. "Ma'am, step away from the property." She spun around. "You're arresting me?" "Not yet," one of them said coolly. "But if you cross that threshold, it becomes trespassing, and you're on thin enough ice already." She looked at Luke. He didn't move, didn't get out, didn't say a word. Just sat in the car like a child who knew he'd lost everything and had no one left to blame. "I birthed her," Heather shouted. "And you beat her," I said softly. "Like you beat me. Like you lied and forged and called it love." She was shaking. And for the first time, I think I saw fear in her eyes. Not because of the police. Not because of Savannah. But because I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't broken anymore. I had Macy. I had the truth. And now, I had the power. Heather was escorted off the property. Not in handcuffs. Not yet. But as she passed me, she hissed, "You think you've won? You think she'll love you more than me?" I leaned in. "She already does." And then I closed the door. Behind it, peace. Above it, justice. And inside it, a little girl finally safe enough to sleep without fear. If you're still watching, my dear friends, tell me in the comments, have you ever seen a cruel person fall into the hole they dug for someone else? And what would you have done if your own child betrayed you like this? I want to hear your story, too. Let's speak for every silenced mother and grandmother out there. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because stories like this are real, and together we make sure they're never ignored again. Chapter 11. The day Gerald's mistress knocked on my door. It was a Wednesday. Bright. Quiet. I was folding Macy's clean laundry, humming softly, a strange peace in my chest. The kind I hadn't felt since before I was somebody's wife. Before I was broken. Then the doorbell rang. And my heart stopped, because the woman standing outside wasn't a neighbor. She wasn't a stranger either. She was her. The one whose perfume Gerald used to come home smelling like. The one I once followed in the mall parking lot just to see what she looked like. Her name was Denise Carlton, and she held a small manila envelope in her hands like it burned her fingers. "Mrs. Holden," she said, voice trembling. "Virginia." I didn't invite her in, didn't smile, just stood there, silent, letting the air thicken. "I know I have no right to be here," she said quickly. "But there's something you need to see." I raised an eyebrow. "I buried my husband 5 years ago," I said. "You had your chance to burn me when he was alive. What could possibly be left now?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know he was married, not until years in. He told me you were crazy. Said you used to scream at him for no reason, make things up. He even showed me a fake divorce paper." I didn't flinch, because none of it shocked me anymore. Not after the betrayal, the beatings, the abandonment. My heart had already been set on fire. What was left to burn? She opened the envelope slowly, pulled out a faded photo. It was of Gerald. And a young girl. A girl who looked painfully like Macy. "This is my daughter," Denise whispered. "Her name is Alana." Gerald was her father. My mouth dried instantly. "He promised to leave everything to her," she said. "But when he died, there was nothing. No trust. No account. Nothing." She looked up at me. "I think Luke and Heather forged some documents. I think they erased her." I stepped back. Suddenly, everything felt upside down. Like the rug had been yanked from beneath every memory I ever believed. "You want me to help you?" I asked. She shook her head. "I want you to know the truth. Anne, I want Alana to know her family, even if Gerald lied to all of us. I didn't say anything, just stared at the photo. That little girl, she had Gerald's nose, my son's eyes, and something innocent in her smile I hadn't seen in years. She's 16 now, Denise added. And she's struggling. I think she deserves to know what she comes from, even if it's ugly. I closed the door gently, without another word. But that night, I stared at the photo for hours. Was it betrayal? Was it another scar? Or was it a door? Because maybe, just maybe, Gerald left behind more than lies. Maybe he left behind unfinished justice. And I had just the fire left in me to chase it. Chapter 12. The secret account Gerald never told anyone about. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the photo of Gerald and the girl, Alana. The same nose as Macy. The same curl at the corner of her smile. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I'd have sworn it was a fake. But Gerald was nothing if not predictable. He was a liar, a manipulator, but he always left a breadcrumb trail. By morning, I was dressed, had Macy dropped at Savannah's house, and was standing at the door of Seaside Community Bank, the same small place where Gerald and I had opened our first joint account back in 1981. The bank manager, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, looked at me like I was crazy when I asked about Gerald Holden's old accounts. He passed almost 7 years ago, she said cautiously. I know. I'm his widow. She studied me for a moment, then typed something on her computer. Seconds later, her eyes widened. There's something odd, she said slowly. He closed his main account years ago, but there's one under a trust title that was never deactivated. Not under his name directly. It's under a beneficiary holding structure, but you're listed as the emergency executor. I stared at her. What? She printed out the paperwork. And there it was, Holden Legacy Trust, amended 2007, listed beneficiaries, Luke Holden, primary, Alana Carlton, secondary, Macy Holden, contingent minor dependent. And in the small, handwritten section at the bottom, if either party is found to have committed moral or legal fraud against a dependent or guardian named above, their claim is revoked in full, and remaining assets will be passed to surviving guardian or caretaker. There was more than $320,000 in it, just sitting there, untouched. I sat back in the stiff leather chair, my hands shaking, but not from fear. From righteous rage. Luke had known. Heather had likely forged documents to hide it. And if I hadn't dug, they would have let Alana rot, Macy suffer, and me die in silence. I looked the manager in the eyes. I need this account frozen immediately for legal audit and fraud review. I'll have my attorney contact you today. Of course, Mrs. Holden. It's your right. I left that bank with a copy of the file and a fire in my chest hotter than ever before. And as I drove home, one thought kept beating inside my head like a drum. Gerald betrayed me in life. But in death, he accidentally handed me the weapon to destroy them all. The final chess pieces were falling into place. Luke and Heather weren't just cruel. They were criminals. And now I held the key to expose them in front of the law, the family, and their own daughter. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever found something after a death that changed everything? Chapter 13. Luke showed up with tears, but I had the trust papers in my hand. It was nearly dusk when his car pulled up. I watched from the window, arms folded, the packet of trust documents on the table behind me. Luke sat there in his car for a while. Just sitting. He was thinner than before. Looked tired. Maybe even defeated. But don't mistake a limp dog for a kind one. I didn't flinch when he rang the bell. Didn't rush. Didn't fix my hair. I wasn't that mother anymore, the one who jumped to please her son even after he threw her away. I opened the door slow, steady. Mom, he whispered, can I come in? I leaned against the doorframe. You hungry? I asked calmly. He blinked. What? You always come crawling when you're hungry. Or broke. Or need something. His face twisted. It's not like that. I came to talk. I said nothing, just stepped aside and let him in. He sat at the kitchen table, looking around the home he once tried to empty. His eyes lingered on Macy's school drawing hanging on the fridge. She'd written Granny in bold crayon letters, surrounded by hearts. Luke choked on the sight. She still draws. Every day, I said. She doesn't cry anymore at night, either. He lowered his head. I didn't know Heather would go that far, he muttered. I didn't mean for it to get so bad. I cut him off. You tied me to a chair, Luke. Silence. You let your wife slap me until my lip bled. You shut the door and turned up the TV while she called me a worm. While Macy watched. I was scared, he whispered. I picked up the trust file, slammed it gently on the table in front of him. You weren't scared. You were greedy. He looked at the documents like they were poison. What is this? Gerald's legacy account. The one you tried to hide. The one that names Alana, his other daughter, and Macy as the rightful heirs. His jaw dropped. How did you? You forgot something, I said coldly. I may be old, but I'm not dead. And I've been through too much to play dumb now. Luke sank into the chair like the air left his body. I'm going to lose everything. I nodded. Yes, you are. He started crying then. Real tears. But they didn't touch me. Not anymore. You've already lost your daughter, I said. She doesn't ask about you anymore. And when she does, it's just one word. Why? Please, Mom. I'll pay it back. I'll fix it. You can't pay back Bled, Luke. His hands trembled. I need help. Heather left me. Took the car, the accounts. I lost the job. I'm behind on the mortgage, I said. So you want to live here again? No, I mean, just until I stood up. No. He blinked. What? You don't get to beg for a bed in the same house you tried to steal. You don't get comfort from the woman you tried to bury. His eyes darted around the room like he was searching for something familiar. Some memory to cling to. Some trace of a mother who might still hold him. But she was gone. I'll go to court, he snapped suddenly. I'll say you poisoned Dad against us, manipulated him. I'll get a lawyer. I opened the drawer. Pulled out a small USB stick. This is a copy of Heather's recorded abuse, I said. Macy's testimony is sealed and protected. Your names are already on the fraud complaint Savannah filed this morning. You try anything, Luke, and I'll finish the war you started. He sat back, pale, hollow. You'll let me die, he whispered. No, I said, walking him to the door. I'll let you live, with the memory of what you did. That's far worse. I shut the door, not just to the house, to every ounce of power he ever had over me. If you've ever looked the person who broke you right in the eye and didn't blink, I want to know. Tell me below. You are not alone. Share your story, ladies, especially those over 60. We don't just survive, we rise. Chapter 14. The day I met Alana, Gerald's forgotten daughter. The first time I saw her. I couldn't breathe. She stood in front of the diner, fidgeting with the sleeves of her faded jacket, her hair pulled back in a tight, nervous ponytail. She looked nothing like Heather, nothing like Luke. But she had Gerald's eyes. That same sharp gray that used to pierce right through me. Only hers didn't carry cruelty. They carried fear, confusion, hope, though she tried to hide it. I stepped out of the car slowly, holding the photo Denise had given me. She looked up. Alana? I asked softly. She nodded. Mrs. Holden? I prefer Virginia. She blinked at me. And then, for just a second, her walls cracked. I didn't know what to wear, she blurted nervously. I don't go to rich restaurants or anything. I laughed, genuinely, for the first time in months. This isn't a date, honey. It's just soup. Let's sit. Inside, we found a quiet booth by the window. She ordered tea. I ordered chicken noodle. Neither of us touched the food right away. I didn't think you'd actually come, she said, finally breaking the silence. I didn't think I would either, I admitted. She looked down at her hands. Did you love him? My heart squeezed. Once, before I knew what love was supposed to feel like. She nodded slowly. My mom says he lied to her. A lot. That he promised to be there and then just disappeared. He was good at that, I said. Making you believe you were special until you weren't. A tear slipped down her cheek. I always thought maybe I was the mistake. That he left because I wasn't enough. I reached across the table and gently touched her hand. No, sweetheart. He left because he was a coward. And cowards run from everything they're too weak to handle. She looked up at me, eyes wide, and suddenly, she didn't look like Gerald anymore. She looked like Macy. Like family. I don't want anything, she whispered. I didn't come for money or inheritance. I just wanted to know if someone out there knew I existed. I opened my purse and slid the trust papers across to her. You exist, I said. And you're not just someone's forgotten daughter. You're a Holden. You have rights, a voice, and if you want it, I'll help you fight for it. Her lips trembled. I've never had a grandma. I smiled. I've never had a granddaughter. And in that strange little diner, with stale breadsticks and cheap wallpaper, something beautiful cracked open between us. Not forgiveness, not even closure, but something stronger. Connection. The kind that doesn't come from blood alone, but from choice. From pain turned into purpose. As I walked her back to the car, she paused, then looked up at me. Do you think Macy would want to meet me? I squeezed her hand. She draws pictures of angels every day. Maybe she's been waiting for one to show up. To the older women watching this, those who've been abandoned, erased, or forgotten, there are daughters out there who need someone just like you. And sometimes, healing comes from the family we choose, not the one that broke us. Let me know in the comments, have you ever found family in the most unexpected place? Chapter 15. Heather showed up at my door with a bruise and a proposal. It was pouring outside, the kind of rain that makes the streets look like mirrors. I was setting Macy's crayons out for her when I heard the knock. Not just a knock, a pounding. I opened the door and there she was. Heather, soaked to the bone, hair plastered to her cheeks, and a bruise blooming across her left eye like rotten fruit. My heart didn't race. My breath didn't quicken. I didn't feel fear anymore when I saw her, only revulsion and curiosity. She looked thinner. Not the smug, lip-glossed viper I remembered. Can I come in? She croaked, holding her arms. Is someone behind you with a gun? I asked coldly. No. Then you can stay right there on the porch. She lowered her eyes. I'm not here to fight. I crossed my arms. I didn't think you were. You lost that war already. Her voice cracked. I left Luke. I blinked. I figured. She laughed softly, bitterly. Of course you did. Probably read about it before I did. He emptied my account, took the car, left me with medical bills and a 2-month eviction notice. I said nothing. Please, she whispered, lifting her head. I need help. You need a confession booth, I snapped. Try a church. She looked behind me, maybe hoping Macy was home, or that I'd suddenly grow soft. I'm not asking for much. Just a place to stay until I can figure things out. Just a roof. One room. I smiled slowly. You know, I said, you once told me I should sleep in the shed because I stunk up the house with my old lady smell. Her face flushed. I know. I was cruel. I was stupid. No, I corrected her. You were dangerous. She stepped back as if the truth burned her more than the rain. But I've changed, she pleaded. I swear to you. Luke used to hit me. I was scared. That's why I turned on you. That's why I tried to control everything. I didn't want to be the one controlled. That's convenient, I muttered. But there's just one problem, Heather. She looked up. You didn't just try to control me. You humiliated me. You enjoyed it. You used a 6-year-old as a shield while you beat her grandmother bloody. Her lip trembled. I deserve that. You deserve worse. That's when she pulled something from her coat. Not a weapon. A deed. To her childhood home. I'll sign it over, she said. You can sell it. I don't care. Just, please don't leave me on the street. I raised an eyebrow. You'd sell your dead parents' house to the woman you tortured for a blanket and hot water? She nodded. I didn't take the deed. I didn't take her hand. I just turned and picked up the cordless phone. Who are you calling? She asked nervously. I looked her in the eye. The shelter. You need a bed. You'll get one. But you won't get mine. She started to cry, no mascara this time, no crocodile charm. Just real, raw, pathetic sobs. She collapsed onto the porch steps. Please don't let Macy see me like this, she whispered. I stared down at her. She doesn't know you anymore. And one day, I'll tell her the truth. Not just what you did, but what you became. I shut the door. Inside, I could still hear her wail. But I didn't shake. Not anymore. Because when the woman who broke you is the one on her knees, that's not cruelty. That's justice. To every woman who's ever had her pain dismissed, her voice silenced, or her scars mocked, remember this. You don't owe your abuser shelter just because they finally feel the rain. Comment below if you've ever stood tall while someone who crushed you came crawling back. I want to hear how you held your ground. Chapter 16. Macy's letter to her mom changed everything. I found it tucked inside her drawing pad, right under a picture she'd titled, Grandma is a Supergirl. At first, I thought it was just another doodle. But then I unfolded it. Lined paper. Purple ink. Big, clumsy handwriting. Misspelled words. But the message? Crystal clear. Dear Mommy, you were mean to Grandma. I saw you hit her. I saw Daddy tie her to the chair. I didn't like it. I wanted to scream, but I hid under the table because I was scared. You said Grandma was bad, but she gives me cookies and helps me sleep when I have sad dreams. You lied, Mommy. I don't like lies. I like truth. Grandma says love doesn't hurt. I think you forgot that. I'm not mad at you. I just don't want to be like you. I want to be like Grandma. Love, Macy. I sat there, frozen, reading it over and over. Each word like a soft stab to the heart. Not because it hurt me, but because of how brave she was. A 6-year-old, putting to paper what the courts never saw. The truth Heather denied. The truth Luke laughed off. That night, I scanned it and sent a copy straight to my lawyer. And to Heather. I didn't write a message. Didn't threaten. Didn't accuse. Just sent the letter. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Heather. She didn't speak at first. I could just hear her breathing. Then she choked out the words. She remembers? I didn't answer. She really remembers all of it? She remembers enough, I said calmly. And now? So will the court. She broke down crying again. But I didn't hang up this time. I let her sob. Let her sit in the silence of the damage she caused. She still loves you, I said finally. But she doesn't want to be like you. That should haunt you more than any sentence ever could. I want to talk to her, she whispered. No, I said gently. You don't get to. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She didn't argue. Because for the first time, she understood what loss really feels like. That letter became my shield. My proof. My weapon without swinging. It was entered into our custody hearing as evidence. Not just of abuse, but of lasting harm. Macy didn't even know what she'd done. She was in the kitchen that night, coloring a new picture. But what she gave me was more powerful than any lawyer ever could. Her truth. Unfiltered. Uncoached. Undeniable. And it changed everything. To the women raising grandbabies because someone else failed them, your voice matters. But theirs? Sometimes it's the most powerful voice in the room. If you've ever had a child tell the truth adults tried to hide, share it in the comments. You're not alone. Chapter 17. The judge called me back, and this time, I spoke without fear. I used to tremble in courtrooms. Back when Gerald first left me and I had to fight for crumbs of his estate. Back when Heather's lawyer tried to paint me as senile, unfit, and bitter. Back when Luke swore under oath that I'd lost my mind and couldn't even tie my own shoes. But not this time. This time, I walked in wearing Macy's drawing on a little pin I had made just for the occasion. Grandma is a supergirl. And I stood tall. My lawyer introduced me as the sole caregiver of Macy Holden. Not the grandmother. The mother figure. Heather sat across the aisle, hands clenched. Her face covered the bruise I knew still lingered beneath thick makeup. Luke was absent. Of course. The judge reviewed the folder I'd submitted, Macy's letter in purple ink placed right on top. He read it silently. His brow furrowed. Then he looked up. "Mrs. Holden," he said. "You have the floor." I nodded. I walked up, gripping the stand. And I began. "Your Honor, I raised a son who forgot me, a husband who erased me, and I welcomed a woman into my home who repaid me with fists, slurs, and chains. Literally, chains. I was tied to a chair, beaten, mocked, starved, humiliated by my own family." I paused. I was called senile because I cried. I was called dramatic because I bled. I was called a burden because I dared to live past 60. But I survived. I looked at Heather. She wouldn't meet my gaze. Macy saw it all. From under the table. From behind doors. She remembers. She still flinches when someone speaks too loudly. I held up the letter. She wrote this to her mother. Not to punish her. Not to hurt her. Just to tell the truth, because she's braver than any of the adults in this room ever were. The judge leaned forward. "Do you fear retaliation?" I smiled faintly. "No, not anymore. Fear dies when you've been through worse than death and come out standing." He nodded. "And what do you seek from this court?" I turned to face him fully. Protection. Peace. And a future for Macy that doesn't include broken promises, bruises, or bedtime tears. I want legal guardianship. Permanently. And I want to ensure that no man or woman who's ever made her cry gets within 10 feet of her without my permission. Silence. Then, the judge slowly nodded. "Motion under review. Very likely to be granted." I sat down, knees weak, but heart strong. For the first time in years, I had not just spoken. I had roared. To every older woman who's been told to let it go, stay quiet, or not cause trouble, your voice is not too loud. It's just finally being heard. Comment below if you've ever had to fight for a child who wasn't safe. What gave you the courage to keep going? Chapter 18. Luke came crawling back, and what I did next shocked even me. I was planting daisies with Macy when I heard someone fiddling with the front gate. Not the mailman. Not a neighbor. I turned and saw him. Luke. Hair longer. Face thinner. Eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept in weeks. And he looked afraid. He didn't say hi. He didn't even fake a smile like Heather used to. He just stood on the gravel path like a man waiting for execution. "Mom," his voice cracked. "Can I talk to you?" Macy looked up at me. "Inside," I said to her gently. "Wash your hands, baby." She obeyed, without question. I think she sensed something in the air. Like a storm was circling her old daddy. I stood up slowly, brushing soil off my knees. "You've got 5 minutes," I said flatly. "And don't call me Mom. You gave that up the day you tied me to a chair like a prisoner." He swallowed hard, staring at the flowers like he couldn't even look me in the eye. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I was angry. I was confused. I thought Heather was telling the truth. "She told me you were trying to take Macy away from us." I laughed once. "Cold. You helped her break me. And now you want my help." He looked up sharply. "She left me." I raised an eyebrow. "So, she cleaned out what was left of my account. Ran off to Las Vegas. I have nothing. And now the bank's threatening to foreclose on the house." "Which house?" I snapped. "The one you tried to kick me out of when you said old people were a liability?" He went quiet again. "I'm not asking for money," he said quickly. "Just a small loan. Just to hold me over until I get back on my feet." I took a step closer. "Do you remember what you said the night you left me bleeding in that kitchen, Luke?" He stiffened. You said, if you die, we'll finally have peace in this house." His face went pale. "Mom, I didn't mean." I stepped closer again, close enough for him to see the scars in my eyes. "You meant it. Just like you meant every time you laughed while Heather slapped me." I pulled a paper from my apron pocket, one I had been carrying for weeks just in case this day ever came. A notarized statement. Legally binding. It stated that I now owned the house he and Heather once lived in. He blinked at it. "What is this?" "The deed," I said simply. Heather signed it over to me. Out of desperation. "Just like you're showing up now." He looked at me in horror. "You took our house?" "No," I smiled. "I took back my dignity, brick by brick." He stepped back, stunned. "You wouldn't let your own son be homeless, would you?" I paused. Then I whispered the same words he once said to me. "If you die, maybe you'll finally have peace." And I shut the gate in his face. Macy watched from the window. She didn't ask who he was. Because to her, he wasn't anyone anymore. To the women who were thrown away, forgotten, or abused by their own children, your story doesn't end in pain. It ends when you reclaim the power they tried to steal. Have you ever stood face to face with someone who betrayed you and walked away stronger? Tell your truth in the comments. Chapter 19. I opened a home for women like me. It started with a single thought. What if I'm not the only one? What if there were dozens, no, hundreds of women like me? Over 60. Discarded. Bruised. Afraid to speak. What if there were grandmothers sleeping in cars? Wives recovering from bruises no one ever photographed? Women locked in basements while their sons smiled in church pews? And what if they had no place to go? I couldn't sleep for nights after Luke showed up begging. Not out of guilt. Out of purpose. Because God didn't let me live through that nightmare just to survive. He let me live to build something. So I did. I sold Heather's house. Every crooked, cursed inch of it. I used the money to buy a 2-story fixer-upper in an old part of town. Peeling paint. Leaky roof. Creaky floors. But when I walked in, I didn't see damage. I saw safety. I named it Macy's Light. A home for women over 55 who had nowhere to go. Women who were kicked out of their own homes. Women who were beaten by their own children. Women whose husbands married secretaries and left them with nothing but bills and arthritis. At first, it was just me and Gloria, the nurse I'd met at the hospital after Heather's last assault. She offered to help. She'd been through it too. Then came Jean. Then Mary. Then a woman named Estelle who hadn't spoken in 6 months, but cried the first night she slept in a real bed again. Macy helped paint the rooms. She made little signs that read, "You are safe here," and taped them to the bedroom doors. She even drew a giant chalk heart on the front porch that read, "Grandmas are superheroes." Period. Every week we held story circles. We cooked together. We cried together. We reminded each other we were not crazy. We were survivors. One evening, I sat on the porch as the sun set behind the trees. Macy sat beside me, sipping apple juice from a coffee cup like she was grown. "Grandma," she said softly, "you made a whole house out of your sadness." I smiled, stroking her hair. "No, baby," I said. "I made it out of hope." To the women who've been hurt in silence, to those told they're too old to start over, you are never too old to become the miracle someone else needs. If you've ever dreamed of turning your pain into purpose, share your story below. Someone out there needs to hear it. Chapter 20. He asked me to forgive him, so I showed him the empty room. It was raining the day Gerald came back. Poetic, really. Like the sky was ashamed of him too. I was in the garden pulling weeds from Macy's little sunflower patch. The girls inside were baking peach cobbler. Laughter drifted from the windows. For once, this house wasn't filled with bruises and silence. Then the gate creaked open. He stood there. Gerald Holden. My husband. The man who'd slept with his secretary while I nursed his mother through her final days. The man who signed divorce papers with a smirk and left me with 3 bags and half a pension. His hair was thinner. His suit damp and stained. He carried a small suitcase. "Virginia," he said. Just my name. Like nothing ever happened. Like he hadn't vanished while I begged God for one warm meal and a roof that didn't leak. I didn't stand. I didn't offer a hug. I stayed in the dirt where he left me years ago. He swallowed hard. Cynthia left me. Took the money. The condo. Everything. I kept pulling weeds. I didn't know where else to go, he said. I heard you. You started something. A home. A safe home, I corrected. For women who've been left behind. He nodded, looking down. I don't want to live in a shelter. I finally stood. Gerald, I said calmly. You don't belong in a shelter. You belong in a mirror, so you can finally look at the man you became. He tried to chuckle, but it came out broken. I'm not proud of what I did. I walked to the porch and opened the front door. He followed like a stray dog. The women inside went quiet. Gloria's eyes widened. Even Macy stepped behind me. Gerald noticed. That hurt him more than my words ever could. I pointed to a small room at the back, freshly painted, quiet, clean. This was the room I kept for the next woman who walked through our gates, I said. The one with bruises under her sleeves and no place to cry. His eyes softened. Can I stay? I stared into his tired, hollow face. Then I walked to the room and shut the door. Locked it. Turned back to him. No, I said. You can't take up the space meant for the broken souls your kind helped shatter. He stood in silence. I gave this house to women who were thrown away, I said. Not to the men who threw them. Then I opened the front door again and held it wide. For you? The rain's still out there. And I let it slam behind him. To every older woman who thought she needed to forgive the people who broke her to find peace, sometimes peace doesn't come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from finally saying, you're not welcome here anymore. Thank you for staying through this journey. If you saw yourself in Virginia's story, know you're not alone. Comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. And don't be afraid to share your truth. You survived. That's your power.